This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. What I'm looking at today are 4 episodes of the first season of Hulu's Monsterland. And they're 4 episodes for a reason. It wasn't one of timing because, let's be honest, I've had time to watch the entire first season of this series. The problem is that I despised, for various reasons, the first 4 episodes of this series I've seen. Now keep in mind, my animus is for very different reasons each episode, but it's consistent in that I don't like this series. I really don't. Now you may be asking yourself, Brian, it's called Monsterland. Monsterland! What is there not to like? Let's talk about for a moment the things I do like about it. Don't worry, this will go fast. It's a very short list. For instance, I like the idea that they name episodes after cities and states. I think that's really cool. I mean, I dig stuff like that. If you have a series that has names after chapters of the Bible, for instance, I'm there. I just like the consistency of it. It feels right to me. And naming each episode based upon where the incidents in question happen works really well. I just dig that conceit. And this show is remarkably well acted, by which I mean horror movies and television shows in the past were pretty mediocrely acted. They weren't bad, but they weren't good either, and oftentimes they didn't have to be. Monsterland is different. This series is so well acted. It's just remarkable to me how good it is. Now that I've finished with what's good about it, let's talk for a moment about what's bad about it. The writing! Only thing that really matters at the end of the day. It's irritatingly bad. And when I say bad, keep in mind something. I'm not saying it's badly written in the sense of the writers don't know what they're doing. Au contraire, I can actually live with that. The problem is they do know what they're doing, and there's obvious intent behind their actions, which is just irritating to me. For example, the first episode, FOURCHON, Louisiana, revolves around a waitress who has a child who she clearly does not want. I get that. That's interesting. There's a monster in it, played by the great Jonathan Tucker. We need to see more of this guy. I think he's awesome. But in any case, the monster doesn't exist in and of itself. It's there to teach a lesson. It's there to make this girl face her fear, face what's been dragging her life down, which is her child. That's right, her child. This is such an irritating and manipulative episode. So what makes it worse is that the answer is for her to give her child to a random rich person. It implies that just because you're rich, you're going to raise a child well. This bothers me to no end. You ever heard of the Menendez brothers? They were rich too. Look what they went and done. This idea that because someone has money, they're best equipped to raise a child is nonsensical on the face of it. Girl, the waitress, also had a back alley abortion, to use the term. It wasn't literally in a back alley, but it's the same idea. And the episode seemed to dwell on the fact that this is part of her reasoning for wanting to give away her child and wanting to not have a child in the first place. After all, she did try to get rid of it. But my thing is, so what? You mean to tell me that there aren't people in the world who regret having a child, yet go on just fine and bringing that child up? It happens more often than you probably think. And the idea that she sticks this child in a rich person's car because rich person is just, once again, insulting. Insulting to all the mothers out there who don't have lots of money and yet manage to raise their children. To the mothers out there who don't have lots of money and oftentimes don't even want their children, but manage to do it anyway because they take some damn responsibility. This is such an irritating, borderline offensive episode. I don't get it. And keep in mind something. I don't mind horror with a social agenda, though this is barely horror. frankly. But I don't mind that. Us, Get Out, I don't mind it at all. But the thing is, when it's done well. Unfortunately, FOURCHON, Louisiana, the episode of Monsterland, not the city, which I've never visited, is not only blatantly manipulative, it's manipulative in a weird way. A very rightward slant to it, which, as I said, is offensive. Blatantly offensive. So already, I should mention, by the way, that it's so well acted. The actress that plays the waitress is great in her depiction of what it's like to be poor and have a child and not being able to cope with the responsibility. She's great in it, but it doesn't fit in this movie. I was more interested in her story, frankly, than the whole monster angle. And when the monster angle did come, it only served to misuse Jonathan Tucker, who, like I said, is a great actor. So already, I'm on a bad foot with this series, though I kind of sucked it up and went to episode 2, which is titled Eugene, Oregon. This revolves around a young person who has to deal with a mother who has had a stroke, and he is unable to do the things he would want to do. What he wants to do is not specified, though what he definitely doesn't want is to sit there and take care of his mother and do menial jobs because he can't do anything else. You've probably noticed something, by the way, about this series thus far. There's a trend for downtrodden people to be blamed for their problems. And that's not to say one shouldn't take personal responsibility for your actions. But the way this series works, that it oftentimes blames people for issues that they were powerless to do anything about. Let's look a little further into the episode, Eugene, Oregon. The antagonist is under the belief that there's a shadow in his home and that it seeks to do him harm. He comes to that conclusion by checking on the internet. Now, this is not an unclever episode, but it's in the same vein as FOURCHON, Louisiana, which is to say, irritating. So, through confiding with these people on the internet, he determines that this shadow is bad and has been the cause of all his misfortune in life. This is a problematic notion at best, but the episode does really well in establishing how unstable this person is. He has difficulty purchasing the medicines his mother needs because he can't find work that pays enough or hold a job long enough to take care of such things. Though he could probably use some type of intervention himself because he's not all stable. And the episode revolves around the idea of the internet influencing people to do terrible things. Spoiler alert, he ends up killing his mother. It's not a bad episode. Neither was the first, for that matter. But it's kind of irritating in the way that both have so far worked particularly hard to blame the victim for whatever situation they happen to be in. It's tiring, it's very right-wing, and it's irritating to watch. Episode 3, New Orleans, Louisiana, is probably as irritating as anything that's come before, which is to say it revolves around a woman whose son is being molested by his stepfather. The problem with this episode is not the molestation is obviously bad, but as far as the episode goes, there's nothing early on that establishes that that's happening. It's almost like you're dealing with a false narrator in a story in which you can't trust anything they say. So the story works on the assumption that she knew what was happening and just denied it. Unfortunately, this is also something the story does not tell us. So it's really odd to see bad things happen to this woman who, up to that point, we weren't aware of doing anything actually wrong. And so there's this monster-type figure who plays a trumpet, who the boy described as actually hurting him, by the way. Though, when he grew up, he claimed that it was his stepfather who did it. It's a confusing, odd episode, and it's just such unsatisfying television. And the worst thing is, it's not terrible. It is well shot, it is well acted. It is well production design. It is just irritating in terms of its sentiment, in terms of its writing. Episode 4, titled New York, New York, was the last one I watched. And it revolves around this rich person responsible for, well, I should say the oil company he owns, is responsible for a massive oil leak. This is less a bad episode than a confusing one. I mean, I don't quite know what the point of it was, though I'm sure if I had a better grasp of it, I'd be irritated just as I've been irritated by the prior 3 episodes. This is a weird series, if you obviously didn't get that impression thus far. It is. And I really don't like it, which is odd for me, typically, because if it's horror adjacent, I'm there for the most part. But this, only 4 episodes in, feels blatantly offensive at times and condescending and weird at best. I've literally felt this way about few things I've seen before, but I cannot stand Monsterland. It's currently on Hulu. You might want to give it a watch. It's not unwatchable, but the messages it gives, at least the first 4 episodes, well, first 3 technically, are just weird and off-putting and really distasteful. Though you've got a mind of your own, let me know what you think. This is Brian with screenfiles.com and review. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like or a follow.